Hi, welcome to my 60s and 70s murder podcast. I'm Grande. Today I'm by myself talking about the Zodiac killer. Unlike our Manson episode, there isn't going to be as much background information because we don't know who this man is. We don't really know who the Zodiac killer was. So there's not so much explaining as to why he's psychologically the way he is or his upbringing or anything like that because we simply do not know who the Zodiac killer was. So one of the first crimes that was suspected of the Zodiac killer was Santa Barbara. Robert Domingos and his fiancée, Linda Edwards, were seniors at this high school in Santa Barbara County, Southern California. June 1963, the couple decided to do senior skip day, as you do, to go sunbathing on a beach in some state park. When the two teenagers didn't arrive home, Robert's father was concerned, and he went down to the beach to look for them and was absolutely horrified to find their bodies laying together inside of this old crumbling shack. The victims were bound with rope and had apparently tried to escape, but they were shot with a .2 caliber weapon. Robert was shot 11 times and Linda had been shot 9 times. The killer dragged the bodies into the shack where he tried yet failed to start a fire. The investigators had a couple leads out, but in 1972, Santa Barbara County's Sheriff Department announced a possible Zodiac connection. The beach killer, the suspected Zodiac, used Winchester Western Super X ammunition, same ammunition that was used in a future murder that we'll talk about later. 1968 murder on the Lake Herman Road. They had the same ammunition, so they were like, this might be a connection, this might be a sign. And the Domingos/Edwards case also had a lot of similarities. The Zodiac's attack on another young couple at a lake that we will talk about. We are going to be talking about the Benicia killings. It was a couple nights before Christmas, and these high school students, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, were on their first date, and they said that they'd be home at 11. Shortly after that time, passing motorcyclist saw the car and saw Betty and David at the Lover's Lane spot along Lake Herman Road in California. Moments later, another driver noticed the two seemingly dead bodies on the side of the road and reported it. That's when the Benicia police and others responded back to the scene and discovered Betty Lou dead and with 5 bullet wounds in her back. And David was found next to the car, the Rambler, with a bullet wound in his head. Still breathing, but near to death, which I think is pretty insane. The fact that he even had breaths after a bullet wound is very unlikely, and I thought that was pretty insane about this specific killing. The bullet holes a bunch of them were in the roof of the car and on the back window, which kind of indicated to the police maybe the killer tried to scare him out the car before he shot them, which worked because the bodies were found outside the car. They also found those shell casings that I mentioned earlier, the same Winchester Western Super X copper coated, which is what caused the relation between the two murders that I just talked about. Vallejo is going to be our next topic of crime scene. A 22-year-old Darlene Farron was a wife, a mother, and a popular waitress at a Vallejo restaurant. On the 4th of July, she picked up a friend named Michael Mago and stopped her Corvair in the parking lot of a Blue Rock Spring Park. Michael later told the police that another vehicle pulled up into the lot around midnight and left, but only returned a couple minutes later, and the driver got out the car, shined a bright flashlight in the car, and fired into the Corvair with a 9mm handgun. Michael was shot in the jaw, shoulder, and leg, and Darlene was hit numerous times. The reason why we got that story is because Michael actually survived this killing, even though he was shot in the shoulder, the jaw, and the leg, and that's where he was able to give his input on what happened and how it went down. The Zodiac was kind of known for having his male victims live. He didn't have like every single male victim live, obviously, but he had more male victims live than women living, which was kind of interesting because people, and the women were usually, sometimes more killed more aggressively. Like, they were both killed in the same manner, but like maybe one has more stab wounds than the other, and it was always the women, which made us believe, maybe the Zodiac killer has some mommy issues or has hard time girl problems. So that's just yeah. So, but at 12:40 p.m., a call traced back to a gas station payphone, and it was a man. He rang the Vallejo police department and claimed responsibility for the shooting, as well as the murders at Lake Herman Road, which is the one that we just talked about. The two that we just talked about, actually. And according to the police dispatcher, the caller spoke in a low monotone voice saying, "I want, quote unquote, I want to report a murder. If you will go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway, you will find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye," end quote. And Darlene unfortunately died on arrival to the hospital, but Michael survived, like I said, and investigators were able to identify any viable suspects at this time. A letter was sent to Vallejo Times. The writer claimed responsibility for the two shootings, just like we just said about the phone call, and provided details about the victims and the weapons and the numbers shot and fired. Now, these weren't regular letters that the police stations received. It was ciphers. It was these little symbols. Some of them had a regular English text, but for the most part, it was symbols that you wouldn't know what they meant. So when they had people, they were getting posted in the newspapers, they were getting sent to the police stations, and everybody was trying to decode what these things were saying, and people were able to. They used like double symbols to try and figure out what the other symbols meant. So there was another letter sent to the San Francisco Chronicle, same day as the one of the Hard Times Herald. One of the three visual indicated letters accompanied by 1/3 of a cipher. The writer demanded publication of the letters and ciphers by Friday. So the Zodiac who wrote these letters were like, "I want this on August 1st, Friday." Immediately. And sometimes he would threat if they didn't do what he said. So pretty much the police station and the newspaper people were just like, they're getting bossed around, pretty much. There was another letter sent to the San Francisco Examiner, same day as the two others, and the writer threatened to kill again if the newspaper did not publish the cipher, which included the words, quote unquote, "I like killing people because it's so much fun," end quote. 3-page letter received by the Examiner on August 4th, 1969, so a couple days later after those three, sent in response to police asking for information to prove the writer actually committed the murders, and this was the first use of the name the Zodiac. The letter he used the name Zodiac, and that's where he got his name from, was once he started to refer to himself as the Zodiac. We're talking about now the Lake Berryessa murder. It was a Saturday late in September. Some college students, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, were relaxing along the shore of Lake Berryessa. And a man appeared holding a gun and wearing a hooded costume with a white cross circle stitched over like the chest area, explaining that he had escaped from prison, that he needed money and a car to escape to Mexico. The stranger bound their wrist with pre-cut lengths of plastic clotheslines. Without warning, he plunged a large knife into Brian's back 6 times. He then stabbed Cecilia 10 times as she fought for her life. Now, that's what I was talking about earlier, how I said that he killed the women or stabbed them most of the time more than the male. And the reason why we know exactly what went down was, once again, Brian survived another male survivor. So that's kind of where we got this idea of what happened from. Was, once again, the men lived, and the Zodiac didn't know how to finish his job to make sure, even with these survivors, this man still could not get caught. So I guess it doesn't really matter if he finished the job or not. The man then walked over to Brian's car and used a pen to draw the cross circle that was on his chest on the door, with dates and locations of previous attacks. The date, September 27th, 69, the time 6:30, and the notation by knife, referring to what just happened and what he just did to these people. At 7:40 p.m., a man called the Napa Police Department, since that was like about 30 miles from where they were, to report a double murder. The caller described Brian's car and directed the police to the scene of the crime and confessed, "I'm the one who did it." The police traced that call to a payphone at a car wash in Napa. Cecilia died 2 days later, but Brian survived. Like, the way this man just goes, like, how does nobody see this guy doing these things? Like, they were on a lake and they were close to the road, and the fact that this guy was able to get away with all of this, they didn't even, back at this time, they didn't even believe in forensics. They didn't trust them. They didn't think that they were accurate, which that's literally all we use nowadays is forensics. We take DNA samples from hairs we find, from blood we find, from saliva, and it just, I guess, wasn't as accurate as they thought. And it is accurate. That's all we use. But back then, they did not care. They did not think that was a working thing. But Brian lived, and him and the previous survivor, Michael, they both came forward and talked about their experiences, helped out the police, explaining what they saw, who they think they saw. So yeah, it's a tough time for murder. Everybody around at this time period was petrified of getting murdered, because it was just, the murderer wasn't getting caught. So everybody was fearful, thinking like, oh my god, the murderer could be around me right now. This murderer could be on the side of the road while my kid's walking home from school, or, everybody was just kind of in a panic state at this time. I'm now going to talk about the San Francisco murder. Paul Stein was the victim. He was a 20-year-old student and husband and worked as a cab driver in San Francisco. That night, he picked up somebody for a destination in the upscale Presidio Heights neighborhood. At the intersection of Washington and Cherry Street, the passenger shot Stein in the head and removed a piece of the victim's shirt. The man walked away just before the police arrived, but the police radio broadcast mistakenly described the suspect as a black man. Interesting. In passing, officers dismissed a white man resembling the correct description. Fingerprints found on the driver's side of the cab may have belonged to the killer, and a sketch was produced based on the descriptions proved by witnesses. They described this man, glasses, crew cut, white, and said he looked normal. The case was considered a routine robbery until the office of the San Francisco Chronicle, which I talked about earlier, received an envelope with a letter from the Zodiac, once again, which began with the words, "I'm the murderer of the taxi driver," and the envelope also contained a piece of that shirt that I mentioned about it being cut out. He had cut a piece of that shirt out and put it in the envelope just to prove that he was the murderer. But the Zodiac denied that he left fingerprints and claimed that the police sketch was inaccurate because he had worn a disguise. So whatever sketch they had of him was not accurate due to him, quote-unquote, wearing a disguise. The Chronicle got another letter, October 13th, 1969. The writer mocked police for failing to catch him and threatened to shoot children on school buses. The envelope contained a piece of that shirt that we talked about, but once again, I said earlier, he was threatening if they didn't listen to the things he said, and he also made more people scared. Like I talked about how the public was so petrified of, being out in public by themselves and whatnot. Now you can't even put your kid on a school bus without being scared. And I'm sure plenty of parents are driving their kids home at this time, or driving them to school from school, just to make sure that would never happen. They actually had police following school buses after that letter came in, just because they didn't want any risk of that happening. There's another envelope to the Chronicle on November 8th, 1969, containing another piece of the cab driver's shirt and a humorous greeting card. Another cipher consisting, over 300 symbols. The writer, Zodiac, added Des, July, August, September, October equals 11. Which is a possible reference to more identified victims. At least that's what the police thought after they decoded it. And then there was sent a 7-page letter to the Chronicle November 9th, the next day, 1969. The longest message from the Zodiac that was ever sent claimed that the police stopped him near a crime scene but let him go. He literally said, "You guys almost had me there for a second, but you guys were too stupid, didn't know it was me, and you let me off." The Zodiac also included a bomb receipt and a diagram of an explosive, which he was obviously, using to scare the public and scare the police officers and stress them out even more. There was another letter addressed to a famous attorney, Melvin Belly, postmarked December 20th, 1969. The writer feared he would kill again and asked Belly to, help him out, just help, please help me. And he said, quote unquote, "Please help me, I cannot remain in control for much longer," is what the letter ended with. And that's the last letter I'm going to talk about for right now, and we're going to move on to the Modesto area. Now, I'm going to say, before I even start the Modesto area, this one isn't a murder, but this was a suspected Zodiac, but I find it so interesting and so scary that I felt like I had to include it. It was a Sunday in late March. 22-year-old Kathleen Johns packed her infant daughter into her car and left San Bernardino, California, to visit her sick mother in the northern part of the state. And Kathleen was also 7 months pregnant at this time with the child of her boyfriend. As she was traveling on a highway near Modesto, another vehicle pulled alongside of her. The driver appeared to signal that Kathleen should pull over on the side of the road, which she did, and he walked over to her and explained, "Hey, your back wheel of your car seems a little bit loose," and he said, "I can fix it for you if you like." And she goes, "Oh, of course, yeah, thank you." And he came over, and he actually ended up loosening the lug nuts on the wheel. So when she went to go drive away after he quote unquote fixed her car, the wheel fell off and she had to pull off on the side of the road immediately. The man circled back around and said, "Oh, that's so weird." And he goes, "I can help you, drive you to a different gas station so you could get some help." And she was just like, okay. She took her infant with her and she climbed into his car. And as they were driving, he passed multiple gas stations, and she said, why can't we use that one? He goes, it wasn't open. And that's when she felt some suspicion, and she jumped, like literally opened the door while driving, jumped out with her baby in her arms, and like rolled. She did a jump and roll. She's like, I'm not tired today. Not me and my babies. So she hopped out, rolled out, and it was definitely very scary for her. I'm very sure that she was probably traumatized by this experience, but she claimed that he also made vile threats to harm her child, and eventually Kathleen, walked out off the side of the road and flagged somebody down for help, and she did end up escaping that scary scenario. But months later, a Zodiac letter mentioned a rather interesting ride with a woman and her baby, which makes us believe that was also the Zodiac killer. Now, after talking about all those murders, we're going to talk about Arthur Lee Allen. This man was fired from an elementary school and was convicted as a sex offender, specifically, towards the children that he worked with. And police detectives said that he was the most likely to be the suspect that committed these crimes. Of October 6, 1969, Allen was interviewed by a detective, John Lynch of Vallejo, the police department, and Allen had been reported in the vicinity of the Lake Berisa attack against Hartnell and Shepard on September 27th of 1969, and he said that he was scuba diving at Salt Point on the day of the attacks. Allen again came to the police's attention in 1971 when his own friend Donald Cheney reported to the police in Manhattan Beach, California, that Allen had spoken of his desire to kill people, use the name Zodiac, and secured a flashlight to a firearm for visibility at night. Now, you can't tell me there's nothing more suspicious than that. Come on. Sure, he could have been making a joke, but who would joke about that at this time? Who would joke about this? This isn't a laughing matter. People are dying, and this guy's like, I'm gonna say this word for word, and you're gonna not say anything about it. And this guy's like, hell no, I'm calling the police. And obviously go down like that. But I just thought it was, sorry, I just hit the mic with my acrylics. I just think it was like, come on, like this guy, after hearing that, this guy is G to the U to the I to the L to the T to the Y. Like, that man is guilty, and you can't tell me otherwise. But Allen was generally well regarded by those who knew him, but he was also described as fixated on young children and angry at women. Remember how I talked about that women were brutally murdered by the Zodiac? Come on. This literally just said that the people that surrounded Allen said that he was angry at women and fixated on young children because, he was a sex offender, and not only that, he threatened school buses to bomb them. The Zodiac, not Allen, because they were never confirmed to be connected. September 1972, San Francisco police obtained a search warrant for Allen's residence. 1974, Allen was arrested for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old boy. He pleaded guilty and only served 2 years of imprisonment, which is stupid. He definitely deserves more years than that. Come on, like, you can't tell me that you can just assault children and get away with that so easily. Like, you're ill. You need to be in prison for the rest of your life. Thank you very much. Vallejo police served another search warrant for Allen's residence in February 1991. But Allen actually eventually ended up dying in 1992. And 2 days after that, the Vallejo police served another warrant and seized property at Allen's residence. In July of 1992, victim Mike Magdu, the one that lived, identified Allen as the man that shot him in 1969 from a photo lineup. saying, quote unquote, "That's him. That's the man who shot me," end quote. However, police officer Donald Folk, who is speculated to have seen the Zodiac fleeing from the Stein killing, which was the taxi man killing, said in a 2007 documentary, the one that says the name of the documentary was, his name was Arthur Lee Allen, and he said that, Donald Folk said that Allen weighed 100 more pounds, weighed 100 more pounds than the man that he saw that night. So it was that was the thing. Like, people were giving descriptions and they weren't as accurate as what other people were saying. But we also found out that the Zodiac wore disguises, so it wasn't very easy to pin who this man was, especially, like I said, since they were not using forensics at this time because it was not trusted. While Nancy Slover, who received the call from the Zodiac in the aftermath of the Magdu/Fernan shooting, said that Allen didn't sound like the man on the phone. She had received a phone call from the Zodiac killer that same night that Michael and Fernan were shot, and she said that she compared the two voices and that they weren't alike. So that was another reason as to why he didn't seem to be the Zodiac that they were looking for. A letter was sent to the Riverside Police Department from Bates' killer was typed with a Royal typewriter with an Elite type, which was the same brand that was found in February 1991, the search of Allen's residence. And he owned and wore a Zodiac brand wristwatch. That was another piece of evidence that made the police think, are we sure it's, like, not this guy? Like, come on. Like, there were so many things that led up to make you believe it was him, but then there were so many things such as what people visually saw that made it not true. Like, he had all the components of being the Zodiac, minus the visual thing itself. Because when it came to the typewriter, the watch, what he said himself about him being referring to himself as the Zodiac and wanting to kill people. The Zodiac said in one of his letters, Zodiac Killer said in one of his letters that he liked killing because it was so much fun, but he also said that his motive for killing people was he wanted more slaves in the afterlife. So he believed, if I go and I kill these people, when I die, it's not even gonna faze me because I will have slaves that will take care of me in the afterlife. Which was, my opinion, that is so disturbing. That literally gave me chills when I found that out. 2002, the SFPD developed a partial DNA profile from the saliva on the stamps of the envelopes of the Zodiac letters that were sent to the police station in the news buildings. The SFPD compared this partial DNA to the DNA of Arthur Lee Allen. A DNA comparison was also made with the DNA of Don Cheney, which was Allen's close friend, the first person to suggest Allen may be the Zodiac killer. That was the one that called in and said, he said this about killing people, he said this about calling himself Zodiac, and neither of the test results indicated a match. Allen and Cheney were excluded as the contributors of DNA. They weren't found to match up with the envelope with the stamps. So they gave that shot up after that. A retired police handwriting expert, Lloyd Cunningham, who worked on the Zodiac case for decades, stated that they, quote, they gave me banana boxes full of Allen's writing, and none of his writing even came close to the Zodiac, nor did DNA extract from the envelopes on the Zodiac letters come close to Arthur Lee Allen. And that's when they pretty much gave up on Arthur Lee Allen being the suspect. I mean, he was already dead. The this case really just kind of died out once they weren't getting anywhere, and Zodiac got off scot-free. He could be alive right now. He could be dead right now, but he could be alive right now, being an 80-year-old man, just chilling. Me and my partner John in the previous episode said, what if there's an old man in a nursing home right now? And he's rambling about being like, oh, I can't believe I killed those people. I can't believe I'm the Zodiac. And the caretaker's just like, sir, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm the Zodiac. She's like, no, just, it's okay. Go to sleep. Just like, no, you're all set. Like, it's time for bed. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the old man has, like, dementia, or now he's, like, saying it as he's about to die, or he talks about it and nobody believes him just because he's an old man? Obviously, it's so hypothetical, but we were just like, whoa, like, that would be such a weird scenario for that to happen. But yeah, the Zodiac got off scot-free, never was found. They had a couple other suspects, but Arthur Lee Allen, like I said, the detectives truly thought that he was the only one that could be possible. And he died anyways, so they just pretty much gave up on him after that DNA result. And that's everything about the Zodiac you need to know. Of course, if you want to do more research, go ahead. I'm Lily Grande, and this was my take on the Zodiac. Thank you.